Hi, everybody. Welcome to City Girls Pod. And this is a show where we are talking about Sex in the City. And we are deep into season 6. Very exciting. We are talking about episodes 14 through 16, or they have it as like part 2, episodes 2 through 2, 3, and 4, I think is how they do it.
They
But
got
anyway,
tricky
we're
with
having
us.
fun talking about episodes. That's what matters. And I'm co-conductor Rachel Wagner, and Jax is here.
Hello.
And our friend Caileigh Scott is here. Caileigh, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be back.
Yes. So if people missed the last time you were on, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit to our audience?
Yes. So my name is Caileigh, and I'm a childhood friend of Jack's, slash comedy partner slash writing partner.
Platonic life partner.
And platonic life partner. Yeah, we've known it. Well, I won't even say it'll make us, I can't even say how long we've known each other because it'll make us sound really old. But I'm an actor, writer, and producer.
Yes. Well, we're excited to have you on the show today. And we have 3 pretty fun episodes, I think. And we give our normal warning, I guess, that this is a mature podcast, mature show. So if that's not your jam, we got tons of other content on Hallmarkies podcast that you can listen to. So let's dive in. Let's talk about it. The first episode is called The Ick Factor. And we have Steve and Miranda getting engaged. Very sweet. And their wedding. So we get the full thing happening. But we also have Harry and Charlotte. They're trying to have a baby. And other shenanigans happen with them. And we have Alexander and Carrie going to the opera. Yeah. So overall, what did you think of this episode, Jax?
I mean, this is really fun. I think this is also like peak Steve and Miranda, which is almost painful to watch given what happened and just like that. But it's a lot of fun. I think we get to see a lot of vulnerability from Charlotte too, which I really love. Something I found confusing that we can talk about more as we dive into it is I definitely have the ick factor with Alexander. He's not my guy, but I am confused why Carrie all of a sudden is like, I can't deal with fancy events when it's like she loves doing that stuff. So I would just want to throw that out there to the group. That's my initial takeaway from this episode. Enjoying it though, enjoying the heck out of this season.
Yeah, I kind of felt that too. But I did love, we'll talk about it more, but I loved that dress. It is one of the better like fashion moments, I think, of the show. But what did you think overall of this episode, Caileigh?
I really liked it. I agree with I agree that there is an ick factor with him. That's just not it's not like how I like to be courted, but to your point, Jack, I think maybe it was more like that's all it ever was with him. Like there was no balance. There was no like the opera in a dress one night and like I don't know, sweats and pizza and like bad television the next night. That was my sort of take on
He's
like where
all grand gestures.
Like like that's exhausting. Like it's like he's constantly like putting on a show and you're like, is there like a real person under here? I'm like, am I actually getting to know someone, or am I just like trying to be impressed the whole time? But no, I thought the episode was good. I thought the Steve and Miranda stuff was super on brand for them as a couple. As someone who's not very into wedding culture, I was like, if only everyone could do that. Like only everyone was like, we're getting hitched in a community garden, come on in. And what else? Oh,
Yeah.
and then of course, and then there's
and then Harry and Charlotte. Yeah. But I did think it was very sweet. And the wedding kind of reminded me of like a quarantine wedding, kind of what happened when you'd have these sort of small little gatherings sometimes just a witness or two, kind of a thing. And I mean, that's what my sister and brother-in-law, they got married by a justice of peace over in England. And it was just them and his, I think, mother and sister, I think, but they recorded it and everything, and they had a cake, and it was very cute. And they'd still, I think, like to have a wedding eventually, but they especially needed to for the visa, madness or whatever. But I think that there were a lot of really cute little weddings like that during the last couple of years.
Yeah.
People,
It's nice
people,
to know that people can do it simply and that we don't have to feed into. If that's what you want, that's great, but you don't have to feel like compelled to feed into the wedding culture if that's not your jam.
mhm, yeah. I mean, I understand why she didn't want to wear white, but I do think that that's kind of a old tradition of it necessarily symbolizing virginity. I feel like that's not really much of a thing anymore. But if she didn't want to wear white, that's fine. But I didn't love what she ended up with. Wasn't my favorite. The velvet.
Yeah. It because I can't remember and I didn't look it up when it aired. Was it supposed to be autumn? Like it felt like
Yeah.
it felt very autumnal. And I know later on there's mention of March being very far away, like in a couple
Mhm.
episodes. So yeah, for like an autumn wedding, I was sort of into it, but I mean, she obviously didn't like if when you think bride, she did not look like a bride. But then again, it's Miranda, so like mission accomplished, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. What'd you think of her dress, Jax?
Yeah, I thought it was sort of like a non-starter for me. Like I didn't dislike it or like it. I
Mhm.
thought the whole not wearing white thing ends up being kind of a funny thing for like the line that she gets to say in the dress shop, but then also when Steve's mom gets to be like, I was with child. I shouldn't have been wearing white. And I live for those moments with
Yeah,
Steve's
that
mom.
was
I think
funny.
she is a loose cannon and I love her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we also have Samantha. She is going to these events with Smith, and that he's named the number one guy to watch. And so she's feeling very insecure because that's the interesting thing about Samantha. She puts on a big front, but she's actually like really insecure about a lot of things. And so she decides that she wants to get a boob job, and she is looking at all of these women and, oh, I like that one, I don't like that one, that one's too big, that one's too small. And uh, and then she ends up going to the doctors, and she gets her surprise, I guess. Jax, what did you think about this with Samantha? First of all, her wanting to get a boob job, her insecurities. What do you think about that?
I mean, Samantha's got a really conventionally and otherwise like wonderful body. I'm all for women doing whatever they want to do that's within their financial realm to do for their body. I think that's great. It's just interesting though because she's never seemed to have a problem with her boobs before until she sees them in these magazines with Smith.
Mhm.
So I feel like it has a lot more to do with her insecurities around dating him and feeling vulnerable than it actually does about her boobs. But thank goodness she does go in for that boob job because
Yeah.
the doctor finds the lump, which was really hard to watch.
Hmm. Yeah, Caileigh, what did you think about this?
I'm the same as Jackie in terms of I think if you want to do, if you want to like modify your body in any way, as long as you can afford to, and as long as the doctor that you're seeing is being responsible about it, I think it's great. I myself get Botox. That's, the most I've done, electively.
Me too,
And
and I
then
love it.
I love it. We love our Botox. And so in terms of that, and And I agree. Like, I mean, she is someone who, like, her insecurities manifest themselves in a very like sexual way. So it did also make sense to me that seeing herself with this like younger sort of rising star man would really activate a lot of her insecurities. And she just happened to zero in on her chest. I did think it was really funny, the like interaction with the bartender who was like, you need to see this doctor, just like the bartender whose breast that she really liked. Doctor's office. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, been there, done that. I wasn't going to the doctor for augmentation. I was just going for a checkup, and my doctor felt a lump and also thought, probably just a cyst, but go get it checked out. And also it was not just a cyst, it was cancer. And I feel like, I mean, Jackie, you could probably attest to this more, but like, surprisingly, I think my reaction was like very similar to Sam's, where I was just
when I was watching this back, I was like, holy moly, because I haven't watched this since your diagnosis. So yeah, I was like, this is almost eerie.
I know. I mean, even to the point of like, so then she doesn't want to ruin the wedding. So she tells Carrie because she doesn't want it sort of hanging over her, but she's also like, I don't want to ruin the wedding. And yeah, Jackie and I had like, it wasn't a wedding, but we had dinner with a friend the day. And I had already known for like a week, sort of, when it doesn't look good and you get a biopsy, they're kind of like, call a breast surgeon. But I found out officially a day that Jackie and I had like a girls' dinner planned with a friend, and I don't want to like ruin I don't want to bring the dinner down, so I just like didn't say anything and just like had dinner.
Talked about true crime and
like our favorite like 25-year-old YouTubers, and then after that, like, we all went home, and then I texted Jackie and I was like, hey, look. But yeah, I think it's funny. And I don't know, I think maybe before this I would have been like, I don't know if that's like a super realistic response, but then having been through it, I was like, oh, that's actually exactly how I responded, like with a ton of humor, super sort of frank about it. It turns out it is actually like a pretty spot on, at least in terms of what happened to me.
From award-winning author Olivia Matthews comes a new cozy mystery in the small town of Peach Coast, Georgia. Murder Out of Character follows book-loving librarian and amateur sleuth Marve after she finds a handwritten list of locals' names at an event. With time running out and a serial killer on the loose, can she piece the clues together in time? Full of Southernisms, a quirky supporting cast, and a sweet side helping of romance, this mystery is the perfect whodunit for your fall reading list. Publishers Weekly calls Murder Out of Character the prose equivalent of a Hallmark family movie. Available now on Amazon and at Barnes & Noble and select bookstores. For more about Murder Out of Character and Olivia's entire Peach Coast Library mystery series, visit www.patriciasurgent.com. That's patriciasurgent.com.
This way you're a Samantha. You're mostly a Carrie, but how you deal with breast cancer.
Samantha.
And then if this is too personal, then you don't have to. But like, how big can you like feel the lump? Do you know that it's there, or is it like, I've always wondered about that. How do you even know?
So like Sam, my doctor found it, and it was 1.3 centimeters. So it was feel. Also, like Sam, I did not have big breasts, so I think maybe in someone with larger breasts, and depending on where it is, you might not feel it. It might be something that's caught in imaging after the age of 40. But I am under the age of 40, so no imaging and no family history. So there was no need. There was no like imaging done early. And so I always had cystic breasts. So I never actually knew how to tell the difference. Like, they always tell you, and I still don't know. I do know women who like found their own. Several women who found their own and went to the doctor, and from there, it unfolded as it unfolded.
So you were lucky. I mean, that you had that appointment. Yeah,
it was just like, I make my rounds in like March, April every year, just to all my doctors, just dermatologist, like PCP, gynecologist, all of that. So it was my PCP who, felt it and said like, probably a cyst, but let's get an image. Let's make sure we know what it is. And so like Sam, it was stage 1. And like Sam, I did adjuvant chemotherapy as well.
So how are you currently feeling? What's your current status, I guess?
I'm good. Sam and I chose different surgeries, so a slightly different path there, but I did 4 rounds and I finished last week as of filming this. So
Wow.
so I'm feeling good.
That's amazing. Well, we'll definitely keep you in our prayers and hope that you continue to recover.
Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing for Samantha because it's the first time the show has really given her something real vulnerable to deal with. I mean, I feel like the other ladies have all had something, sort of traumatic to kind of deal with, and I feel like this is her first one, really meaty, from her.
Yeah, and we sort of see her figure out how to rely on people because that's not really her MO, like letting Smith in. I mean, like the girls, yes, I think it was more interesting, or not more interesting, but I found it interesting to watch her actually let him in and like let him be part of it and let him help her. Whereas like the girls, it was kind of a given that they were gonna, be a part of this with her. But yeah, she is someone who, is sort of a serial dater, non-committal person, for her to be in a relationship and to have something very big happen, was super interesting for her character.
Yeah. So we have Alexander writing Carrie a song, and he loves poetry. He loves kind of doting on her in that way, and she's struggling with it. And Carrie says, have New York women settled for a sugar-free lifestyle? Have we become romance intolerant? And it's interesting because we talk about the love languages, and obviously Alexander and Carrie have very different love languages. And in a relationship, how do you make that work when your energies are so different and you express yourself so different? What do you think, Jax?
I mean, I thought what Caileigh said earlier really nailed it, at least for me, the way I look at Alexander and like sort of this archetype of, it's usually a man that courts in this way. Are you real? Is there a real person there? Or do you just like to do these things almost for your own ego? And I think everyone defines romance differently. And I think me probably maybe when I was like 19 or 20 and I was like, I just want a boy who will like play me the guitar. And I was just so different then. Like, that's what I thought romance was. And now I'm like, oh, it's pretty much like just like, this wouldn't work on me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Would it work on you, Rachel? She's like, yeah, what?
I can be a little bit of a cornball. I think it's that there's a little bit of what are they in How I Met Your Mother, they call the Doppler versus Dahmer, that if it's somebody that you really like that's doing the gesture, then it's romantic. But if it's somebody that you're not that into, then it's creepy and weird.
Yeah.
So there's some of that. But there does become a point. I mean, and they haven't been dating that long, so maybe that's part of it. Is that he's still in that kind of like, I don't know, butterfly sort of stage, and then it gets kind of more grounded later on. But I can be kind of cheesy. I don't know. It depends. I might like it.
I mean, you know what? You know that. No, okay, something that I do want to throw out there. I don't think he's that considerate of her, other than these grand gestures.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what gets under my skin a little bit. Because Rachel, I think if someone was courting you in this way, they would also need to be like a good person.
Yeah. I mean, I would love going to the opera in a pretty dress. That is definitely my jam. And you're right. Why is Carrie that a problem for Carrie? She seems like she would love that, but I do love the fact that Harry's like, he thinks he's romantic. I'm actually romantic. And the true romance is going to the tasty freeze, even if you don't like it. Your girl.
It
Yeah.
is. And I think that's what Carrie is sort of missing. And I think also, he's trying to impress her with all of these things, but it is, how do you impress someone who already has, he's trying to impress someone who has access to this stuff. And so I think maybe that's part of it too, where she's like, okay, I could take myself to this. And like, this is fine and fun, but she shows up at his apartment in jeans, I think. So I think with relationships, she does want that sort of comfort and like the low key element. This is someone who tried to domesticate big, like she,
Yeah.
and this is Aiden for a really long time. I think there's that too. And sort of like, as someone who lives in New York, who lives like very close to Lincoln Center, I would be like, okay, like, oh gosh, I have to act like super impressed by this, but I can just go to the opera. It's right there. And I would just want at least like some, first of all, I wouldn't want them to be like, you're welcome. Like, I'm taking you to the opera. You're welcome. Because I'd be like, I could take myself. And then the other part of it is I would at least be like, okay, that's fine. Like, great. Let's go to the opera. Let's do it. But like, maybe the next night we can go to a dive bar. And just talk. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite scenes in any movie ever is in Moonstruck when Nicolas Cage takes Cher to the opera. So and they have an incredible scene after where it's so good. So I mean, it can really be great. But yeah, I love Harry and Charlotte, and they go to the fancy French restaurant, and then they get the runs, which is not fun, but very funny. And yeah, it was interesting where I was talking on Twitter the other day about Carrie saying that is romance, if we become romance intolerant. And we were talking on Twitter about this quote that Rachel Zegler was saying about how they were going to make Snow White feel like strong and independent and not and lessen the role of the romance. And so we were talking about the fact that I feel like now it's almost seen like if somebody falls in love, it's less feminine or less strong. It's like a weakness of them, and I hate that. I think that falling in love is absolutely should be a part of feminism, and it's okay to fall in love. Like, you're not a stronger person if you don't fall in love. Like, both parts can be great. Like, I don't know. I hate that this sort of era we're in where it's like the female character is somehow stronger if she's not in a relationship. That's ridiculous. I don't like that.
Yeah, I think it's just people like sort of misconstruing like you can be super dependent on a person, and that's not healthy for a relationship. So, yeah, we probably don't want to see women being depicted as being extremely dependent on a man, but falling in love is also very vulnerable and brave. And so it's not necessarily like being in a relationship. I don't think anyone needs to dial back the romance, but it's like, yeah, take a look at your script. If it's about a straight couple, is this female part of that in some way very dependent and lacking independence? Because you really want to watch two whole people come together. Like, that's the most interesting thing.
Yeah.
And that's, that is sort of what we see with Charlotte and Harry. Like, she doesn't need him and he doesn't need her. And that's what makes their relationship work, because they're choosing each other. And like, that's so interesting to watch. And just the juxtaposition of like their romantic evenings, like what Carrie really wants is like, she doesn't want food poisoning, but lying in bed, being like sweaty and disgusting and sick with someone else actually brings you so close to that person. Whereas like the opera is fun, but that's not going to bond you like that terrible night that Charlotte and Harry have, because like that is what bonds you. You get through that, like seeing each other at your worst, like you hope you have a second bathroom to go to.
I was just going to say, as a New Yorker with only one bathroom and will only ever have one bathroom, I think we were all a little envious of when she noted that they had another one, even if she couldn't make it there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I had that situation with it wasn't as violent of a food poisoning, but yeah, I had that situation with an ex where we were both just like something wasn't right. And we just had one bathroom and that's rough, but it does bring you that whole kind of scenario brings you very close to another person.
Mm-hmm.
And
Have
yeah.
either of you seen the American version of Fever Pitch? Drew Barrymore, Justin Long. It's really good. Very underrated.
Yeah.
And they in the their first date that they go on, she gets super sick and he takes care of her and is so sweet and like gets her soup and everything and I think it's such like a swoon worthy, even though it's a weird first date, it's so swoon worthy. It's really good.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that.
It's a good movie.
That's
I'm not Justin Long.
accelerated
It's
intimacy in a way that I'm okay with.
Yes.
It's not Justin Long. It's what's his name?
Fallon,
He
I
does
think.
Fallon. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It came out like the year that the Sox, I think, like
Yes.
won, and it was like a
Yeah,
bit
they
of
like changed the
Boston
whole
love
script
story.
because they hadn't won they hadn't been good for so long, but then all of a sudden the season they're filming, they win the World Series, and so they actually changed the script around for it. So
That's fun.
it's a good movie. I mean, both versions. The British version's also good, but it's about football / soccer, and it's Colin Farrell. Not Colin Farrell. What's wrong with me today? Colin Firth. Colin
Oh,
Firth.
well, definitely watch it if it's
Yeah,
fun.
both good. Very good. Anyway, so here we have to ask you, Caileigh. We've talked about this before, Jax and I, but do you have a go-to McDonald's order?
I honestly haven't been to McDonald's in so long, and I'm not in like a judgy health conscious way. I'm more of a Wendy's gal, but with McDonald's, I would always usually, like, if I go into a McDonald's and there is one like a few blocks from me, it's to get some sort of ice cream. Like,
Yeah,
for whatever
ice cream's
reason,
good.
like, yeah, that's why I'm going into McDonald's. Like, maybe fries too, like fries and ice cream. But if I get like just a hankering for like a milkshake, I'm walking into the McDonald's a couple blocks away, and you don't have to talk to anyone because it's just you just like tap it on a screen. So that's that's not super exciting, but that is I also don't eat meat, so like a little limiting. But yeah, any ice cream that they serve, I'll probably eat.
I do think that the desserts / breakfasts are peak McDonald's. Yeah. So
good pancakes. Good pancakes.
Yes.
They're actually really good.
And
As
the
are
apple,
the hash browns.
the apple pies are
Yes.
really good. So they go to McDonald's. They do have the best French fries, in my opinion, as well. Of any of the so they go to McDonald's, Alexander and Carrie. At first she faints, which I found kind of shocking. That she fainted. But they go to McDonald's and they dance, which is probably the sweetest moment the two have as a couple.
Yeah, that was cute. It was real. The juxtaposition of like what they were wearing in the McDonald's, I really liked. The fainting, I didn't quite get.
Yeah, it was weird.
Didn't seem in character for her. It seemed very like like a Victorian woman, like needing a fainting couch, sort of. I didn't really get that, but
I was like, is Carrie doing a bit right now?
Right.
This a bit?
Who knows? Maybe the writers were like, I don't know how to. We need to like something to happen to like have this conversation happen, and maybe they were like, I don't know. I guess she just faints. Like, it's season 6. People will buy it. But yeah, that was a little odd. But that was like the scene where I was like, okay, maybe I could see them as a couple. Like the scene in the McDonald's where I was like, maybe I'll buy this. I wasn't super sold.
Yeah.
But at least you're like, oh, there's a glimmer of, I don't know, something there.
It was definitely a weird choice, I think, for the final season. For her final non-big relationship. I don't know if it was an interesting choice, and somebody who never acted before. He's a professional actors, professional ballet dancer.
Yeah.
So not even a trained actor. So I don't know. It was I would be interested to know kind of how that all happened.
Hopefully,
But
my guess is Sarah Jessica Parker loves the ballet, is very involved in the New York City ballet.
oh,
It was probably like Mikhail Baryshnikov. And I love Mikhail Baryshnikov, and I was also a dancer. So I was like thrilled that he was on there. I just wished that they had done him better. Like
yeah,
as a character. Obviously, she's not going to end up with him. We know that. But I just wish that I had liked Alexander more, because I do love Mikhail Baryshnikov. And I was like, what a
yeah.
weird melding of worlds.
Yeah,
So
and I just think the acting is strong. I just think I watched it all out of order the first time, so I got to the end of the not so great stuff he does, so I was completely clouded by.
mm. Well, so then Samantha tells Carrie that she has cancer, and then doesn't want to talk about it at the wedding. But then Miranda insists, and so she does, and she says we were all ourselves that day, just the way Miranda wanted it. So that was very sweet, and the wedding was very sweet and tough if you watched it just like that, because they were very frustrating on that show, but hopefully they redeem themselves, redeem Steve.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
what would you?
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say
you
when
go ahead.
Miranda has that line about you are my people when she
Oh,
finds
yeah.
out about the cancer. I mean, and all the girls are there talking. It's like this is the whole thing, the whole thread throughout the show, that they're each other's soulmates. And this is what makes this show great, that it's in the fun times and they're drinking Cosmos and talking about men, and then it's also when the life is really, really tough. So yeah, I like this episode a lot.
Yeah. So what would you give this episode 1 to 10? What do you think, Jax?
I think I give it an 8.5. I really, really like it. I think it's an important episode for really every single one of these characters, but especially Miranda and especially Sam.
What do you think, Caileigh?
Agreed. I'm like between an 8.5 and a 9. I feel like all 4 characters had important things happen, to some like 2 very big and 2 sort of like just on the way to a bigger storyline. And I felt like everything, aside from the fainting, everything was very very much who they are. And I think I think I pushed to a 9 because of what Jax just mentioned, the scene at the wedding, where it's her wedding reception, and Miranda's, who is she hanging out with? Like, who are her soulmates? It's her friends, which like is the whole point of the show. So.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Pilot Podcast. My name is BJ.
And my name is Me Too, and we promise this promo is worth it, so please don't skip ahead.
We're 2 judgy friends who put our judgmental skills to work for you. We review the pilot episodes of new and popular shows, and shows that our listeners request to answer your question, should I watch this?
Look, a lot of us are spending a lot more time at home, and yes, we should be reading and trying new projects and enriching ourselves, but does anything beat binging a great show?
Let us take the guesswork out of deciding what your next show will be. Tune in to The Pilot Podcast at thepilotpodcast.com.
Well, next episode, I agree with you guys. So the next episode is Catch 38, it's called. And in this episode, you have Alexander and Carrie watching Brady, and you have Miranda suffering through a honeymoon. And it's Samantha trying to get into a particular doctor, a female doctor that she wants, and her meeting a nun there at the doctor's, and her finally telling Smith about her cancer. And so yeah, lots going on in this episode. Samantha finds out that she is going to have a lumpectomy and then a round of chemo. And so, yeah, what do you think overall about this episode, Jax?
I really, really like this one. I thought it was really exciting to get, I feel like, such a full episode of getting to see Samantha shine, and both in her being kind of like this like tough woman, do whatever it takes to make it happen, to having a lot of empathy for other people in the situation too, and to being really funny and vulnerable. I feel like this was like the kind of episode that she's deserved for a long time. So I was really all in on this one.
Yeah. What do you think, Caileigh?
Same. I really like this a lot. And I think, you know, what she does, which, you know, we'll get to, but what she does in regards to the appointment with the nun is, I think, a big moment of growth for Sam. And I don't think that that's necessarily something she would have done pre-diagnosis. And I don't think that's something she would have done in season 1. So that was such a great scene. Well, it was multiple scenes, but that was such a great, you know, little arc that she had within that doctor's office that I really liked. And I liked the episode overall. You know, I think I'm always a little surprised by Carrie's reaction to all the baby stuff, but maybe that's just like me projecting onto her. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I did like the episode a lot.
So Samantha gets really upset with her doctor, who tells her that that women who haven't had children are more likely to get breast cancer, and he's not wrong. I found a study by the National Institute of Health, the National Cancer Institute, that there is a relationship between, or a risk factor, that it just says studies have shown that a woman's risk of developing breast cancer is related to her exposure to hormones that are produced by her ovaries. Reproductive factors that increase the duration and or levels of exposure to ovarian hormones, which stimulate cell growth, have been associated with an increase in breast cancer risk. These factors include early onset menstruation, late onset of menopause, and factors that may allow breast tissue to be exposed to high levels of hormones for longer periods of time, such as later age at first pregnancy and never having given birth. So he's not wrong.
It's weird though. Imagine being with a doctor and being like, cool. That's not helpful to me. I mean, I say this as a childless woman myself. I would just be like, all right, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I guess once you already have it, is it helpful to really know that you were high risk? Is that helpful? Like, it seems like maybe that's information that's helpful before you have it, but once you have it, is it kind of gilding the lily to tell her that? I don't know. Caileigh, what do you think?
I mean, I think, well, first of all, I don't think anybody's reason for having children should be to prevent breast cancer. I think there's,
Yes.
like, I don't think that is a good move to make. I think if you are high risk, there's many other mitigation you know, there's a lot of reasons to have kids. That's not one of them.
That's true.
So like, that's kind of the main reason that it bothers me, because like, what is someone supposed to do? Even if you haven't been diagnosed, like, what are you supposed to do? Like, rush out and have a kid because you think maybe it's gonna reduce, like, that's not why you should bring a human being onto this planet. And also, I think, yes, it's definitely like part of the science, but and I mean, like, look, a lot of doctors sort of lack compassion or bedside manner. That wasn't my experience, thankfully. But I think the way he says it, it's very like typical of some doctors, but also it's like you can present that information to a patient, I think, in a way that isn't like, he definitely makes her feel like it's accusatory and sort of judgmental. And, you know, you can say like, and sorry if you can hear background noise. There's something happening on my normally like very quiet street. That's New York for you. But I think you can present information to a patient without making them feel like they did anything wrong. Like, my doctors never made me feel like anything I ever did caused it, other than like, I have not one of the like sort of main known about high risk genetic mutations, but I have a genetic mutation, turns out, that actually does indicate a moderate increased risk of breast cancer. So yeah, like, what was I gonna do? Like, not
Yeah.
and there was no reason to ever test me for that beforehand. I get why she's upset. I think if it had been presented to me in that way, I don't know if I would have like stormed out. I would have found a new doctor though. I think I would have been like, this isn't really for me. I think I need someone, woman or not, who can at least present that fact more compassionately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You agree, Jax?
Yeah, I mean, I think even and Rachel, you sent me that article before that I was reading through, and like even the way the article says it, you can make it seem, you can go through all the things that affect it rather than just being like, oh, because you are like, I feel a lot in this show the women, and I get it, feel attacked for being either single or childless, and it's like, no, we're not gonna play that game. I need someone who understands me. So yeah, I think that was great that it also did remind me, and Caileigh could talk more about that too, but just I felt like a lot of people came together to help her find the right doctor, and I feel like you had a nice village of women behind you doing that as well.
Yes. Yeah. You know, people who have been there before, who are like, you have to see my like, you have to see my surgeon. I'm going to go with you. So my surgeon knows that I want you to see her, sort of a thing. Because it is, you're like, what, you know, it's very overwhelming. And you're like, who do I even go to? So it's good to have that sort of village, which, you know, in Sam's case, she doesn't seem to know any survivors. So she has to, in that particular regard, like start the village herself.
Yes.
Well, and I also really related to Carrie in this episode because she's watching Brady and with Alexander, he's so great with Brady, and she finds out that he has a daughter who's now 22 named Chloe, and he's had a vasectomy, and that part of his life is over, and she's 38 and feeling like, well, what, I have to figure out this question of like, what do I want? And she says that that if she had wanted to have a baby, she probably would have by now. But what, I don't know, just I thought it was a really interesting conversation, because I think every woman at least has that discussion within themselves of like, well, what do I want, and can I make it happen? And I thought that was really, because I think that women don't want to feel like they're not maternal, like, but you don't necessarily need to have a baby, you know, to sort of that. But there is that feeling of like, there's something wrong with me if I don't want to have a baby. I don't know. I feel that. What do you think, Jax?
I mean, I think thankfully, even since these episodes aired, a lot of that has changed. Like, I think that I am really lucky to know so many more women that I'm close with, you two among them, that are childless, as am I, and plan to remain. And I love kids, and I think I'm very maternal, but it's such a lifestyle change, and it's such a thing to commit to that's so different than just loving to be around children. I think it is, I will say, the information of him having a child would have thrown me. I would have happily dated someone with a kid. I think I actually would have really enjoyed that. Like, I have no problems with that. I think it's suspect that at this point you haven't mentioned that you have a child, and that hit me in a way. And the vasectomy too, while that's not necessarily pertinent information right now, I just, I don't know. It's just kind of like, what are you hiding, boy? What's going on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was, so I have dated, I guess only one, but I've dated someone who has children, and I think I found out, well, in modern age, I like figured it out because of Instagram, but I was told on like date 2. So it's a little bizarre. And I mean, like, his children are school aged, and obviously Alexander's is grown, but I do think it's a part of, it's such a big part of your life, being a parent, obviously. And I think it struck me as odd that I think they had clocked it as like 2 months or so ish around this point. Like, it's not brand new. It's a little odd to me that he had never mentioned it before. And also, if someone you're sleeping with has had a vasectomy, like, it also seems like something you would know. Like, I feel like anything like that comes up pretty early. So like, I just saw those as red flags from
Yeah.
him. And it has nothing to, like, aside from, okay, maybe he, like, that part of his life is done, and she, she might want that. And obviously that's, that's a deal breaker, but it's just like that he kept it from her. And that just seems weird to me, because again, it goes back to, is she actually getting to know the real person underneath, like, all of this like pomp and circumstance that he kind of puts on.
Yeah. I did like her journal entry when she says that, how do we separate what we should do from what we do? And that can be a lot of pressure, the sort of the shoulds of things. And one of my, I guess, when I was in my 20s, one of my like spiritual struggles, I guess you'd say, was that, especially in my faith, there is definitely an expected kind of role for women a lot of times, to be sort of maternal and to have children. And I mean, that's just kind of expected. And because my mom had babies when I was in high school, I had two. I had one when I was a freshman and one when I was just starting college, actually. I didn't really have like the sort of perfect view of being a mother that a lot of other Mormon girls had my age. And
with a realistic view, you got to
I
see
was
it
like, that's really hard. I don't want to do that. And but it was hard for me, because when I would hear sometimes talks and things like that, they would talk about just how wonderful women are and how nurturing and sweet and blah blah blah. And I would just be like, that's not who I am at all. And this is not very nice, but I would call it the ooey gooey women. And it just didn't feel like me. I didn't feel like I was an ooey gooey woman. And and it was hard. But I finally kind of came to the realization, or the revelation, whatever you want to call it, that God loved me for me, and he made me the way that I am, and that he was going to use me however I needed to be used. And I didn't need to be like those other women, and I shouldn't have judged them. But it was something that was hard for me growing up. And so I relate to what Carrie is kind of feeling about, like, I think there's still this expectation of that even if you don't have children, I do think there's still this expectation of, this is the way that you should feel about children, and this is the way that women should be, if that makes sense. That they should be ooey and gooey, and some of us just aren't ooey and gooey.
I love watching Miranda be not ooey gooey, but being a mom. Like, that's kind of fun too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And speaking of not ooey gooey, so Miranda is not on this honeymoon. She is not ooey gooey.
Oh man, I get this. I can't relax. Like, I remember watching this episode for the first time, like, and just being like, that looks like my nightmare. Not that I can't relax. I just mean, I do different things to relax. This is not for me. I get it.
Yeah, that's like the setting I'm into. Like, take me to a cabin in the woods. I'm so into that. But like, I want it, and this was obviously like almost 20 years ago, but I want cell reception / Wi-Fi. I would like a television. I like to bond with people by like curling up and watching like a movie, whatever, something stupid. So I would want the option of a television, even if it's like hidden away. It doesn't have to be like prominently displayed, but I would like to be able to use it. and I would be like, let's go do stuff. Like, let's go on a hike. Like, I wouldn't want to stay in that cabin the whole time. I'd be like, yeah, beautiful environment that we're in. We escaped the city. Like, let's enjoy it. And I would feel very suffocated by Steve if I were her, as she did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rachel, how would you feel? You're a Steve stan, so maybe you're like, this is my jam.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I would probably be the hardest part would be not having my phone, because I am full on out addicted to my phone. I went to a sleep therapist a while back, and she said to me, she said, how about you go this whole weekend without looking at your phone? And my immediate reaction was like, I had like a physical reaction, and I was kind of shocked that I had that reaction. And she's like, whoa, okay, how about we go this afternoon? I'm like, okay, I can do that. Sure.
Yeah, at least like work up to it.
Yeah.
Like,
like, I could go a whole weekend. Are you crazy? Because I don't know, I just have so many balls in the air. I feel like if I don't have my phone, everything just falls apart, which probably isn't true, but that's my anxiety. I feel like instead of it being an anxiety reducing activity, it's an anxiety increasing activity. But yeah, and I mean, it's hard just because I love media so much. I love movies. I love, things that relaxing. I would want it to at least have a TV. I mean, because that's just part of the fun. And I'm not much of an outdoorsy person, I have to say, as far as hiking and stuff. No, thank you. But if we could swim, I'm a big swimmer, big swimming fan. But anyway, yeah, it was pretty funny. Things just get worse and worse. It kind of reminded me of, if you want to see a really funny movie, there's this movie called Save Yourselves. This was at Sundance a couple of years ago, but it's about this like yuppie couple who decide to go to this off the grid cabin, and while they're at the cabin, there's an alien invasion, and it's really funny. You should check it out.
Oh, that
And
sounds fun. That
there's
would
like
spice things up. I could do that.
yeah, there's like a gun at the and she's like, should we get the gun? And she's like, do I look like a gun person? Like, what? I don't know. It's a really funny movie. But yeah. I think that I would at least want a TV. But I don't know why they didn't know that going into this. This was like a friend's cabin or something. All right.
I don't remember. My impression, I guess my impression was that Steve was sort of in charge of, like, Steve had kind of handled the whole cabin thing, and Miranda was just like, sure, I'll take off of work. That was, maybe I'm totally wrong, but that, and I like,
yeah, that's the vibe I got too. Yeah.
So Samantha tells Smith, and that was a really good scene. Yeah, we all really like him. And then we also find out that the receptionist for this doctor that they're waiting from is a big fan of Smith.
She was really funny.
She did such a good job.
She did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole scene, and I'm blanking on the name of the actress who played the nun, but she's also so great.
Yeah, Julia Sweeney is her name.
Yes, thank you, Julia Sweeney. She's so great. My friend, when I was diagnosed, it said like, something to the effect of like, welcome to the club. It's a club no one wants to be in, but like, it's a really strong club, and you sort of see that in Samantha, like, again, like that moment of personal growth that we see anyway, where she's like, she, whatever, she makes sure that the nun gets an appointment too.
Yeah. Well, and it is true. My brother-in-law's grandma became a nun after her husband passed away. And so I met her. She was living in Indianapolis when I was serving my mission there. And so I met her, and that was one of the things she says, that they don't like wear the habit all the time like you see in movies and the full habit. And so yeah, that is a thing, that they just wear regular clothes a lot of the time.
I thought it was so funny when she shows up in it to just try to
Yeah.
like
I
up
love
the
that.
drama.
Yeah.
Will this work? This tactic? Yeah, I thought that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also loved when yeah, they were bonding over a variety of things, and I liked that the nun wasn't they weren't judgmental of each other,
Right.
even though they're so different. And I think it's like what you're saying, Caileigh, that they all realize they're in this like same club that no one wants to be in. They just sort of accept each other for who they were, and that they're stuck there together doing that. And it was really, I definitely teared up when she got the nun the 7:45 appointment.
I know, me too. It was like, Sam. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
she did it after she got her own, but it's like she wasn't just gonna leave another person in the same situation, like hanging out to dry.
Yeah.
And what I appreciate about it too is I think for Sam, it was not, and this was very on character, like, and they didn't make it some sort of weird thing where like she had any sort of connection to this woman being a nun. Like she wasn't helping her because she was a nun. She was helping her because she was a breast cancer patient.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was super on brand because like Sam is not a religious person and wouldn't feel like compelled to help someone based on the fact that they were a nun.
Mhm.
Yeah, and along those lines, I also love the way that she did it without any sort of like ceremony. It was like she was getting someone a table at a hot new restaurant. Like, you're welcome. Yeah, I thought that was also very on brand for Sam. They didn't make it this like really meaningful moment, and because they didn't, that's why I was crying.
Exactly,
Mhm.
because then the nun says says thanks or whatever, and then it just moves on. Like it's not like she's sitting there sobbing like I'll never repay you. Like
Yes.
Mhm. It
Like,
was just
thank
a
God,
sweet
and
little
Sam's like, thank my
moment.
boyfriend.
Yeah. One last thing. So Carrie is wearing this knit hat when she's talking with Alexander. What do we think of that? Do you think it's cute? Pink floppy kind of knit hat.
For the time, yes. Like if you had asked 2004, 3 or 4 me, I would have been like cute. Now I'm less into it.
Jax, do you like it?
Okay, yes, but in the way that it's like, I feel like half the time Carrie's in a full-on costume. Like she's like the manic pixie dream girl, like doing that thing. And but sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And I almost like that, especially season 6 where some of it's just wild,
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, next episode that we're talking about is called Out of the Frying Pan. And this is where we have Charlotte and Harry. They tried IVF twice and found out none of her eggs are viable. And then we have Steve and Miranda start looking for an apartment in Brooklyn. And then we also have Carrie getting frustrated with Alexander about their different ways of dealing with this cancer in their friends' lives and their different communication styles, that's for sure. And then we have Samantha looking for a wig for an event with Smith. So pretty fun episode. What did you think overall, Caileigh?
I really like this one a lot.
Ho, ho, ho. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch-alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind-the-scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/hallmarkies.
There was a lot of fun moments with Charlotte and the dog and that whole journey. And I kind of forgot that that's how she acquired her dog. And I'm not a fan of Carrie and Alexander. This is the episode where you're like, okay, I feel like he's maybe not a bad person, but they're very much not right for each other based on like the communication barrier, because he wasn't trying to be an asshole. But the way it was coming across, was not great. And then Sam's whole journey, I think is so funny. I mean, the poor man in the wig shop, but
yeah. So
did you
have popsicles at your chemo?
I did have popsicles. And it's interesting.
Chemo lounge.
Yeah. Luckily my breast center had like individual rooms. So you were like chilling.
That's good.
There was a TV. I did not have popsicles, but they did have food and like applesauce and stuff. And I brought a lot of my own snacks. But it's interesting going through something like this in a pandemic, because it is a very different experience. Where you couldn't just like have people come in. You could have like one person who was fully vaccinated accompany you to the first one, and then that was it, unless you were someone who had like full-time assistance or like a home health aide or something, and needed the home health aide, and like that person could come. So yeah, I didn't like get to have my girls come and
happy hour, like it was like a popsicle happy hour.
Yeah, no one can, but also like you get pre-meds, like I got Benadryl, so it's not like by the end of it I was sort of perked back up, but there's like a lot of time that you're just sitting there, like my hands and feet were on ice to prevent neuropathy, and I was sort of happy to just be alone and be left alone and have a TV on that I wasn't really watching, because the Benadryl had me so sleepy. So yeah, different experience there. Not saying that I think scams does happen, less likely in a pandemic.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what was it like for you going wig shopping?
So I'm so into wigs. I certainly I want my hair to grow back, but and I cold capped, which is a method to try to preserve it, and it did preserve some, but not in a way that, like, if I walked up on the street with my hair as it is, people would be like, something's going on there, which Sam points out, like, I don't want to look sick like I don't want to like walk around looking like a sick person, which is something that people who have alopecia deal with as well. And so I didn't go anywhere. I didn't go anywhere. I just lucked out. I was a little nervous with red, like auburn sort of copper hair, finding a match, but I found tons of really good matches. I have like an expensive wig that looks almost exactly like my actual hair, like bizarrely so, I think. And then I have other wigs that are a color match, but different styles. So I've had a lot of fun with it. I went with trying to make it look as much like my actual hair as possible. But I do have a pink wig, like Salmon's, ultimately ends up wearing at one point.
And I feel like now, because fashion colors, this is what they, I guess, call it, that they are they're so common now that it wouldn't even people wouldn't even give it a second thought if you had pink hair on the red carpet.
Yeah. And even like on the street in New York City, I wore the pink wig to ring the bell. It's a tradition to like ring a bell when you finish chemo.
Oh yeah.
I wore a pink wig to ring the bell. And at first I was like, oh, I'm not going to wear this. Like, I'll take it off and just put something else on to walk home. And then I was like, I mean, I guess I'll just wear it home. And I'm sure some people like look twice, but nobody really seemed to know or care.
No, it's so common now. I mean, it's really lost its rebellious factor, I feel like, colored hair. But yeah, we all, like we said, we also have Charlotte and Harry and in this episode, and IVF is brutal, and it's not very effective. I found a thing. It says the latest report from 2018 shows 50% of IVF procedures in women ages 35 and under resulted in a live birth. For women ages 42 and older, 3.9% of egg transfers resulted in a birth. So, I mean, even for under 35, 50%. And a lot of times those doctors really oversell it, and they're like, we're the ones that are I've heard from a lot of friends and stuff who've done this because it's so expensive to do it. And it's extremely stressful. It's painful. You get on all these hormones with it. So yeah, it's not something, I guess, to be taken lightly. And if they've already done it twice, I can understand why this is a very difficult thing for them. Situation.
Yeah, it's so hard to see her go through. I have a friend she's pregnant now, which is great, but she went through it 3 times, and she's a single mom, and I mean, just the kind of strength that it takes to do that, I mean, it's just unimaginable to me. And yeah, watching her go through this, and Harry saying to her, like, are we going to do it again? She's like, yes, of course. I mean, and he's so supportive, and they're such a good team. But I really do appreciate that Harry is lovingly letting her know there are other options for them to have children. But I don't think he's pushing it. I think he's just being, again, wonderfully Harry.
Yeah.
He's like, let's stop on IVF. He's just like, there's multiple roads to parenthood, and we can always talk about the other ones.
Yeah. And then she meets Dana Ivy playing this lady, Trudy, who has show dogs. And she has this little dog that's it's a Cocker Spaniel, right? Is that right?
Is it like a King Charles? Maybe?
Yeah.
Something
so
like
cute. It's like a Lady and the Tramp dog.
Yes.
Lady dog. And adorable. And Trudy's kind of like, oh, he has a short leg. So it's kind of, just because he's not perfect doesn't mean he's not valued. Very
Charlotte
sweet,
relates.
very sweet. And Trudy ends up sending her a puppy, which was just so cute. And they decide to name Elizabeth Taylor, which is so funny and adorable. The part that made me like squirm is both times that when Alexander kills the mouse at the beginning I don't think you really could do that. I think the mouse would squirm away before you could squish it with a frying pan like that. But then when that like a big mouse is in her bed, oh my gosh, I would die.
I had that happen once, that the mouse was on my bed. And I mean, it's weird though. Like, I thought I would have flipped out more, but in the moment, there's not a ton that you could do. It wasn't by my face, but I was in bed. I was alone in bed, and it was at like the foot of the bed. And I just remember like getting up and like standing on the bed and like just kind of flouncing it off, and then like leaving the house and just hoping that it would work itself out. Right. Like, I don't even know what happened because I didn't kill it. And I was living with roommates at the time, but I don't think anyone did anything about it. But yeah, the killing it with a frying pan was hard to stomach. And also Carrie, I think, was a little bit like, that felt a little barbaric to her. I'm not saying that you can just let rodents overrun your home, but the way it was done, I think it scared her a little bit because it scared me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm also a fan of catch and release. Like that's what I do. When the problem arises, I have no problem like catching a cute little mouse, taking it outside, releasing it somewhere with greens, and like hoping it stays there. Yeah, I found that like I just hated it because I will catch and release. And it was so violent and like unnecessarily violent. I've never had a mouse in my bed. I had a cockroach in my bed once.
Oh, that's worse, I think. Oh, that's bad too.
Mice are cute, and some people have mice as pets.
Yes.
And I don't know anyone who has a cockroach as a pet.
No.
I just like pulled back my bed and it was in
Even
there.
the
Maybe
sound of cockroach, like, oh,
Yeah.
the worst.
it was bad. But even that I didn't like. Well, first of all, like, I'm not gonna smash it in my bed. It was like late. I was trying to go to bed. My roommate and I, this was in college, we just like covered her arm in like bags and paper towel, and she grabbed it, and then we like ran down the hall and pulled down the trash chute and like sent the whole, like the bags, the paper towel, and the roach down the trash chute. So like it's not like I was like put it on the floor and stomp it. I was like, let's just move it somewhere else.
Move it. It'll survive. They survive anything.
And it's a
Ugh.
roach. Like I wouldn't have thrown a mouse down a trash chute. Like that's sad to me. I would have taken it outside. But I'm like, a roach will survive it. If it's alive, it'll survive it. It'll be in the trash where it loves and thrives.
Honestly, you're providing a community service to that cockroach.
I'm not as nice as you. I have mouse traps and I use them and I take them. I've only had it happen twice. One time there was a mouse underneath my bed, which freaked me out, and it got caught in the mouse trap. And then the other time was in my kitchen area, and it got on a glue trap. Oh,
I
it was
hate
so
those.
gross.
Those are awful too, because it's like other traps at least just take them out, whereas like the glue traps, they suffer and they make no, and they're like screaming. I can't.
It was
I
so
hate
gross. It was so gross. So
Gross.
yeah, it is not. Oh, it is awful. It is awful. They're just so gross. But anyway, and so I mean, it's an interesting conversation I think that Alexander and Carrie have, and when he says, I just didn't want you to be surprised by it, and I feel like that, yes, he should be sensitive to her, especially when she asks him repeatedly not to talk about it, but I also think like it probably isn't all that healthy to like pretend that it's not even like an option and not even like kind of deal with it at all. Is probably not the best, but I don't know.
The way he speaks about it though is such a conversation killer, excuse my pun, but like she died. It's like, it's not like he's talking her through it or saying, oh, I actually had a friend who passed away. It was really hard for me and kind of surprising, but she had a later stage cancer. Do you want to talk about it? It is, I mean, it's just the way he goes about it is so startling, and it's immediately like centering himself in it. Yeah, I don't know. It was hard to watch.
And he's not listening to her. Like that's what bothers me is, and he just keeps repeating the same thing. Like if you're really like, I need to get this, I really feel it's important to communicate this thing to this person. And you're like, my friend who died. And they're like, oh my God, no. Like, I don't want to hear it. And then the next thing you say is, but my friend who died. And they're like, stop, please stop. It's like, he just kept trying to start it the same way. We're like, that's not working. Like
no new tactic.
Yeah. Like she's not going to hear it. She's not going to receive whatever like wisdom you think you're bestowing because like your approach is wrong for her. So either pivot and try
a
to
different
start
approach.
Yeah. Like try to start moving, like heading in that direction in a different way. Like, let me tell you about my friend, or just cut to the chase. Like I was really surprised and it was really like traumatic for me to have gone through it this way. And that's all I was trying to tell you. And then let her be like, okay, I want to hear more. But it's just the way he's refusing to listen to her and then like calls her a child that I hate.
So what do we think about Steve and Miranda moving to Brooklyn? And I did look just out of curiosity. It is true that they're way cheaper. Even now to this day, you can get some pretty good deals. I was looking on Brooklyn on Zillow. There's some pretty nice places for like under $300,000. You can get apartments in Brooklyn still to this day. Yeah, whereas like in Manhattan, I mean, forget it.
Yeah. Depending on the
So,
neighborhood in Brooklyn.
yeah.
I have to look at this because Brooklyn is trendy now. So Brooklyn's not for me. I did try it. But I have to look at this through the lens of 20 years ago where like you did not like move to Brooklyn. Whereas now it's like the very cool place to be. So to leave the Upper West Side for Brooklyn, I don't know if they ever specified. I just always assumed she bought like in Brooklyn Heights. That's always been my impression. And Brooklyn Heights is a very nice neighborhood. So something affordable there would have to be as run down and like fixer upper-y as what they end up with, because that is a nicer neighborhood. That's, you know, like the Cosby Show, although like not a fan of his, but that is the neighborhood that the
brownstones.
Yeah, it is brownstone Brooklyn. So I've always just assumed that an Upper West Sider, if they move to Brooklyn, is moving to Brooklyn Heights. So that is like a pricier neighborhood, but she did what you do if you're smart financially, which is you like buy the rundown place, fix it up, and then you're in a great place. Yeah, it's a struggle. And 20 years ago, I mean, 20 years ago, going to Brooklyn, and even today, if you move there, like you have to know that your Manhattan friends aren't going to come to your apartment. Like they're not. You're going to have to go to them every single time. And so you're going to feel sort of removed from them and further away. And it's a bigger hassle to get over the bridge and all of that stuff. So she does it for her family. It's a sacrifice that she realizes is the right call, but it's hard to watch her move to Brooklyn, I gotta say.
Yeah, and he says this isn't about you anymore. And that's true. You know, your family gets bigger, you need more space. I mean, you gotta make it work. Yeah, what do you think, Jax, about moving to Brooklyn?
Well, I lived in Astoria, Queens for a long time, as Caileigh knows. She's been there many times. I lived in Brooklyn very, very briefly. I love the Manhattan love in this show though. Like I love living in Manhattan. But it is funny too how they have no mercy for her in the most adorable, hilarious way. Like she's ordering Manhattans and Carrie's like, well, Manhattan's so great. And I think it also is funny too. I think it was in this episode, which also reminded me of you, Caileigh, because I don't think you actually did this, but you joked about doing this when Samantha's like, I have cancer.
Oh, I've done that.
I fully support it. Like it's the one excuse. I'm like, yeah, sure.
And I've done it in almost like the exact same way where I'm like, I'm like very openly aware. I'm like making people aware that I am absolutely pulling the cancer card, where I'm just like I can't remember. I was at a work event out in the Hamptons and I like joked with someone about doing something. And I was like, I mean, and at the same time as I was like, I have cancer, they were like, but you have cancer. So it is a get out of jail free card. And if you're lucky, it's not permanent. So you got to use it while you can. Absolutely. And I also would 100%, if someone was like, do you want to meet me in Brooklyn for brunch? I'd be like, ooh, I have cancer.
Come to the Upper West Side.
Yeah. Or at least we'll meet in the middle.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of the cancer, so Smith shaves his hair.
Oh my goodness.
Samantha, which was so swoon worthy. He's so great.
This man.
Yeah.
And you think he's gonna shave her head, and then he shaves his own. Like he doesn't take that away from her. He just like, because that is like a moment for those who do it, like an empowering moment. But yeah, he just like joins her in it, and in solidarity, it's so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm surprised that this Jason Lewis, he hasn't done. I mean, he's kept working, I guess. The last project he was in was 2018. So maybe I wonder what he's doing, because he's so great. He's so charismatic, and he seems like somebody who could have really been a big star. So you always wonder how things work.
Come on, pod.
Yeah, Jason, we love you.
Yes. Yes. He was on Brothers and Sisters. And few other things, but anyway, he's great, and I love the character. So what would you give this episode, Caileigh, 1 to 10?
I would give this a 9.
Mm-hmm.
It's up there.
It's a good one.
It's good. I can handle the violent mouse thing, just barely, but everything else I thought was great.
What do you think, Jax?
Yeah, I would agree. I think aside from again, not really feeling as we've all said, Carrie and Alexander, but between the dog and Smith shaving his head and being there for Samantha, and she is this great vulnerable moment. And then I love the Manhattan love. Like it's just so iconic. Sex in the City. It makes me all warm and fuzzy inside. I would also give it a 9. It's such a great episode, and you can almost feel them getting towards the end, which also kind of gives me a lot of feels too.
Yeah, we're almost done. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would probably give it like an 8 or an 8.5, but it's a fun episode. So there we go. Thank you so much, Caileigh, for coming and talking with us. This was so fun.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. And if people want to follow you on socials and everything, how can they do that?
You can follow me on Instagram at Caileigh Scott, CAILEIGHSCOTT. I always spell it out because it is not phonetic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Jax, what about you?
Jacqueline C tweets on Twitter and Jacqueline Collier on Instagram.
Great. And you can follow us at City Girls Pod on Twitter. Every time I see anything Sex and the City related, I try to post it. So make sure to check out that. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out. Also, make sure you're following the podcast, Hallmarkies Pod, and Hallmarkies Podcast, all over social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps us a lot. 5 stars. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate that. And check out our patron group and merch store. We have City Girls Pod merch. Take a look at that. And thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Bye.